everyone. Hope you guys had a good lunch break and networking sessions. Hope you got to meet some new people. I'm Lisa Bull. I'm partner and CMO at Yobo Spirit House. I'm also a board member of Asians in Advertising, and I can't say how great it is to see so many new faces out in the audience and some familiar ones. I'm thrilled to introduce our next panel, sponsored by Giant Spoon, Building Bridges. It's really a conversation about cultivating meaningful relationships and navigating workplace dynamics with purpose. Today, you'll hear practical insights on networking with intention, collaborating across teams and industries, thriving in complex and ever-changing environments. So today, just to kind of like level set how we're defining building bridges, it's really something that starts early on in your career as you network and collaborate with coworkers and people within your industry, and how that evolves as your career progresses, and the connections open up opportunities and add value to you as you get more senior in your career. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our incredible speakers, Rachel Maeng Brown, founder of Gen Agency, David Kim, executive director at Postmates, and Michelle Sugihara, executive director and CEO of Cape. Great, so I think we can sit. And I think before we get started, I would love for each of you just to quickly introduce yourselves.
Sure. Like she said, my name is Rachel. I'm the founder and CEO of Gen Agency. We are a talent and brand marketing agency that specializes in influencers, sports, and entertainment.
Hey, I'm David Kim. For the past 5 years, I've been the executive creative director on Postmates, which was acquired by Uber. Before that, I was director of creative studio at Netflix. And before that, been like 20 years in advertising. But this is my first AIA conference, which is exciting.
We're so happy to have you here.
And it's cool to see so many Asians talking about advertising. I feel like there's a lot of disappointed parents out there, but that's a good thing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Sugihara. I run a nonprofit called CAPE, which stands for the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. We are the world's longest-running nonprofit supporting Asian and Pacific Islander people, stories, and culture. It is also my first AIA. I'm very excited to be here. And thank you. CAPE is celebrating our 35th anniversary next year, and I love being in the company of such wonderful Asian Americans.
Awesome, thank you. And I think it's also Rachel's first time too.
Yeah.
So we have a whole panel full of newbies, but we're excited to welcome you into the community and looking forward to many more events to come. I think before we get started, I just wanted to ask Rachel, David, and Michelle a little bit about what building bridges means to them in their respective careers.
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm a little bit on the younger side. I think that, building bridges is about creating relationships, but not just creating them, it's managing them and then strengthening them. And as you grow in leadership, I think the strength of your relationships, the people that you know, the people that you work with, or the people that can help you in other facets of what you do and what your company may need to do, I think that's really, for me, what building bridges has been and has grown to.
Yeah, I think building bridges happens at kind of like every touch point, specifically for me, dealing with making creative stuff and campaigns, it's never one individual, right? You're injecting your own sort of personal aesthetic point of view into things, but there's operations pieces to it, there's marketing pieces to it, there's product, there's so many other folks that are going to help your idea come to life. It's just a very, very critical skill set to build.
Yeah, I think just building off of that, it's the connections. So building relationships, building the bridges between people, ideas, and cultures. And that's really something that begins at very early ages, even when you're in school, throughout your entire career.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that earlier on the prep call and even right before we got out here in the green room, just the importance of sort of thinking about the connections you're making. Some of those may be happening right today here at the conference, which is awesome. And I think like one thing that you said, Michelle, when we were talking is, CAPE has such an incredible mission. It's really to educate, connect, and empower AAPI artists and leaders in media and entertainment. And so a big part of that is, building connections with allies across the media and entertainment industries. So I'd love for you to share, Michelle, because there have been so many, and we were just talking about how long we've actually known each other. It's longer than when we do count, it's longer than we thought. But what opportunities have come from you and your team around building connections and new programming and other opportunities for that?
For us, it's really the connections that we build within our own community as well as with the allies, as you had mentioned. And so starting from within, we have 9 different pathway programs across entertainment. So we focus on writers as well as executives and filmmakers and the constellation of the creatives. And for us, it is building that new ecosystem from within so that they all know each other and will hire each other and work with each other. And then from there, we have also been able to build relationships with other nonprofits, our corporate partners, the studios, and that's really so the community is the hub, and then we have the spokes radiating out towards all of our community or corporate partners as well.
And do you find that people are open to that?
Historically, yes. I think I've been just very lucky over the years that we've been in this position where we are being sought out for our community building and for our expertise. I'm very curious to see now more than ever where we can hunker down and really be in solidarity as we face the headwinds of the current climate.
Yeah. Anything, David or Rachel, that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I would say, I'm in an industry, social media, sports, entertainment, that's very demographically non-Asian. And specifically in sports, I've worked with a lot of counterparts that are white, that are black, brown, whatever ethnicity, and so much of my career, I think, has been shaped by the allies that I have in the industry, whether it be somebody who is above me, who can speak really well of me and my body of work, or it's someone that works with me, alongside me, or even an intern that works for me. And having those relationships has been so incredibly important in allowing me to grow the business, to break into different areas of the business. And I think that, being able to create those relationships across different demographical lines, even different levels of leadership, or even where you currently are, I think it's incredibly important to help you move your career forward.
A lot of what we do on Postmates is based on partnerships and collaborations. So, and they happen at a lot of different points. So we have to work with restaurants, right? And then we have to work with some cultural tastemaker, like an artist or a musician. And when you do those right, what's nice is those partners want to continue working with you, but it also signals to potential new partners that you're doing it right. You're doing it in a really collaborative way, in an understanding way, and in a way that kind of, pushes culture or has some sort of cultural impact. And so I think it's very, very important to, really nurture those things and bring in experts in the room to be representing these different groups properly.
Yeah, I think you all kind of echo something that I read recently in a Forbes article entitled, "Why Building Relationships is Essential to Business Success." And actually in the first sentence of the article, it says relationships take priority over results, which sort of sounds a little bit counter to the priorities we usually hear, which is all about revenue, revenue, revenue. But I think, Rachel, for you as a founder who's built an incredible business around bringing brand experiences to life through partnership deals with athletes, brands, and influencers, curious to know what strategies you found useful when you were starting your company, especially with that note of, relationships are more paramount than revenue.
Yeah, I think it's been a short 4 years, a short but long 4 years. I think, I got really lucky that I learned early on the importance of relationships and how important it is to not only grow and to network and find those people, those like-minded people, the allies, but also to shape the relationships that you have and utilize them to get a new project or to help another person out by maybe taking a lower, a lower paycheck on a project, or something where you give up a relationship that you have to someone else because it's beneficial to them, not necessarily to you. So I think for me, relationships have played such an incredible role. It let me go to Super Bowl for the past couple years. It let me go to NBA All-Star. It lets me, go backstage on really, really fun things, really amazing things at my age. And it's all because of the relationships that I've grown and built since when we first started years ago. The creators that we brought in, they brought in other creators. And then even today, I work with other managers, we work with other agencies, and just having those ability to work with other people and let other people know how well you work, the body of work that you have is so incredibly important.
Yeah, you bring up something really interesting. I think we were talking about it as well. It sort of starts out on the early onset of your career, but building the foundation, the trust, your brand, how you show up, and what people can expect from you. I think is equally as important as you sort of start out and build those relationships. David and Michelle, any?
I would add that it really is about what you're bringing to the table. So there's a book written by Adam Grant. He's a psychology professor at Wharton. It's called Give and Take. And it's really, he divides the world into givers and takers. And he says, ultimately, it's the givers that end up going further in life. And so like how Rachel was just saying, like even you might take a lower paying job or like a loss leader in a sense, but in the end, everything comes back to you because this community is really small. Like the world is really small and people move from job to job, people have memories. And so just be kind to as everyone is really what I would say.
Yeah, I would say even something to add on as tangible advice for people that are, in these early phases of their career is write down the people that you network with. I always say to my interns, to the people we work with, have an Excel sheet or something where you can write down someone's name, their title, where you met them, the last conversation you may have had with them, what you spoke about, and keep that, Excel sheet or that book of contacts and revisit it. Talk back to those people in a month, in a couple weeks, or maybe you only speak to them twice a year at like Super Bowl. That's your one event that you see them. But it's, again, building a relationship with these people, knowing things about them, showing that you care, and being able to, build that relationship beyond just that one time.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Michelle.
That's a lot. That's amazing. To piggyback on that, I would say just attending events like this is really important, and like to keep showing up. Like for me, I don't know if I could do that. I attend about 5 to 7 events a week. I think I meet 1,000 people a year on average. So it's really the people that I see again and again at different events that I really am able to build more of a relationship because there's no way I could do that. I respect that, but that is incredible.
I think part of it is just like showing up, right? To your point, it's just, it's showing up to things, making yourself visible, and I think there's just a natural curiosity that also helps too in building relationships if you're genuinely open and like, you can always tell when people aren't listening versus listening, and just if you're actively listening, you'll be surprised at how much you learn. And like, you just shouldn't underestimate people you come across as well. There's some juniors that I've met that are like now running companies and departments and enjoying incredible success. So I also feel like just being nice to people, because you never know if they're going to be your boss in the future.
100%. And I think, even similar how I became involved with Asians in advertising, I read about it, I reached out to Bernice. We happened to just exchange a couple of emails. I was going to be in town for work, and I said, could you grab a coffee to meet? And that's sort of how we met a couple years ago. And I think sometimes those are, I think people ask a lot about, like, how do I start the networking, or it feels awkward. And certainly for myself, along with others, I'm sure it wasn't natural for me, but I found kind of you find your own way in, you find a common thread that you're interested in, and that's the way to sort of able to lean in. I wanted to just sort of pivot a little bit because we've been talking about a lot of external kind of building bridges, but I would love to sort of talk a little bit about internal bridges that we have to build. If you're all kind of starting out or if you're more seasoned in your career, you realize working at any kind of company, you are working with not in a vacuum. You're working with other teams, and sometimes it becomes a little challenging maybe to navigate other teams that are not part of your own to sort of work towards a deadline, work towards projects. So I think, one question I had for David, and we were chatting about this in the prep call as well, is that, on being an executive director on the brand side, there's, a lot of value in shaping these internal partnerships that you have with different teams, marketing, sales, I'm sure it goes on. And just would love to know from you, like specifically at Postmates, which is so collaboration heavy, like how do you sort of manage and develop those relationships, and how do you handle something when it becomes a challenge? Because inevitably we always, there's challenges and bumps along the road.
Oh, for sure. So I'm kind of curious. How many people are creatives in this room, like at ad agencies? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I get asked a lot about like, what's it like to be a creative, brand side versus agency side? And I think the biggest thing is like agency side, this notion of building bridges and working collaboratively is so much more important than at an ad agency. And I was kind of fortunate enough to work at, fortunate and unfortunate in some regards, where like creative was held on this pedestal and you kind of, you got away with a lot and everything was in service of like what creative wanted. And then you come to a brand side job and that notion is obliterated. Like you really have to put your ego aside. No one really cares how many awards you won, that you're creative or blah, blah, blah. It's all about like what drives business, what's going to be like, meaningful to shareholder value, all of this stuff. And I think it just makes you grow up a little bit, and that part is very important as well if you want to have a long career. And even I would say on the agency side, as you move up, you're going to be fostering relationships with your client side partners, and what they really want to know is like, do you have a fundamental understanding of the business? So back to the like client side thing, like internally, I had no idea what like operations people did before I started the job. I didn't realize there were like, salespeople who were managing all the relationships with our restaurants and trying to get more restaurants on our platform. And the more you kind of understand what they do, you can also start to influence that. So like for Postmates, what was very important was like having sort of like cult restaurants, not like giant enterprise restaurants. So whenever I came down to LA, I'm based in Oakland, but whenever I came down to LA, I would always be like, all right, these are these 5 restaurants. I'm seeing them blow up on Infatuation Neater. Like I want these to be on our platform. And so you can influence like your own tastes on the business. And then the other thing is I had tremendous empathy for our marketing partners, where I think in the past I maybe thought of like account people as like, oh, like they're always in the way of creative, but you realize like, no, they're actually like totally have the same goals as you, but they're just kind of approaching it from a different angle. And that sense of team feels much more multidisciplinary now and robust. And like I said, a little bit more adult, it just feels like we're all grown-ups trying to like work towards the same thing.
Yeah, I would say from my side, I used to work for the New York Mets, the baseball team, and something that I found when I was there, and that was really such a pivotal time in my career because it was really the first time that I was in a corporation. I was on the sales side, but I made relationships and became friends with a lot of different departments, whether it was marketing, it was athlete-player relations, or it might have been community. And that was such an amazing opportunity because I actually got to sit in their departments and do a little work with our alumni relations and some other areas. And to this day, my closest friends and my friends that I see every day, they are from these other organizations that I worked with. And I think at that point, I realized that it's not just about the vertical promotions that you can have, it's also about the lateral and the diagonal promotions too. So if you work for a company and maybe it's not the company that, or it's not the position that you want to end up in, you do have the opportunity to network and build relationships with other departments and even other people who can not only help you within that organization, but who can also help you beyond that organization, right? Because people, they retire or they get promoted, they leave companies, and if they can speak about how well you work and the body of work that you do, you have the opportunity to network with them and keep a relationship and potentially move into a new role at a new company.
I think that's a wonderful way to map out your career as you're looking at it. It's not a ladder, it's more of a jungle gym.
A jungle gym.
100%. And it's not linear, it's sort of this path. And I always, sort of just to dovetail for what you said, I always love to learn about what other teams do because I do feel like it's additive to not only, my understanding of where my role sits in relationship to others, but it also helps me communicate clearer if I understand everyone's role and their team's goals, so that I can be that connector that brings people together to get whatever the project is over the finish line. But I was going to say, Rachel, you mentioned that you're at the Mets, and I'm sure you also mentioned that you're always sort of meeting new people. It just happens to be, all of us do, but I think in your line of work specifically, developing new relationships as your business scales. So I guess, my question is just in your negotiations with partners, how have you guys handled situations? Have you handled situations that have involved pushback or resistance, and how did that help sort of build upon your experience?
Yeah, I think where I see a lot of pushback and where I see, some situations that I have to handle eloquently is in a lot of times the different levels of diversity that I have, right? Like I am at the C-suite level, and I've been really, really lucky to be in some amazing rooms and work with some really amazing people, be on some amazing panels. And very often I am the youngest. I am very often the only Asian person, and very often the only woman or woman of color. And so a lot of times, I have to come into the room, and someone else said this earlier too, about understanding the politics of the room that you're in, of the company that you're in, that we all have to kind of play these games, and you have to kind of placate to whatever the politics are of the company that you're working in. But I also look at my intersectional diversity as something that is helpful to me, right? Like I'm the only Asian woman in the room. I'm the youngest person in the room. I'm the closest to the generation of individuals that we're trying to market to. I have the best understanding. And, being the only Asian woman in the room, the youngest, whatever that, level of diversity is, there's a lot more eyes on you. And that can come with a lot of anxiety, and it can come with a lot of worry that you might fail. But I think that I've always looked at it as it means that more eyes are on me. More people are going to see how hard I work and the success that I have. And that's really how I try to handle all the situations that I may be in that are could be negative or could be a situation that I really have to navigate through and kind of play those politics. I always look at it as, they can see my success, and my success is louder than just my diversity.
Yeah. Michelle or David, do you have any thoughts or examples of where that's been the case for you, or in terms of
Have I ever had to deal with pushback? Is that the question?
And how has that been handled?
Never.
Yeah.
I'm very convincing, and everyone always agrees with me. Look, that happens, right? I think especially when you're trying to do work that, might be filled with a little more tension or something. So one is I think you just have to learn to deal with like some level of just people saying no and rejection, and you can always come back to them with another idea or another approach. I think you just have to have like a stomach for that. But then I also think, you know, you can always just ask sort of very tactical advice. It doesn't always have to be in the room. You can agree to disagree in the room and then separately outside go, okay, yo, what's really up? Why aren't you liking this? Or tell me, give me a little more information. And just that one, just level of effort to like hear someone out, I think makes them more empathetic. But then you'll get a better understanding. You'll have more information on how to handle that situation, and you might be able to come up with a solution that satisfies everyone.
I think what Rachel was saying about the politics that is so true, and especially as an Asian woman, I always looked younger than I was, and so my previous life I was an attorney, and there would be situations where I would be the lead attorney on the case, and I would walk in and I would be mistaken for the court reporter or asked to get coffee, and I think that's something that I don't know if I know I'm not the only one that has had that experience, and so it's really like that is where you have that power to play the game. Like, where do you sit? There is that statistic, if you don't speak up in the first 25% of a meeting, you probably won't say anything that entire time. So I would always challenge myself to say something, at least in that first 25% of a meeting. And so also to what David was saying about it being not yet, not a no, you can always go back with another offer or another, maybe you just caught them on a different day or a different person, and you can just talk to them at that time. So I think there's just a lot of things happening all at once, and sometimes that's the thing that can become overwhelming. But then when you really slow it down, you know that as you're building a relationship, it's not only a one-time interaction. And so that hopefully, as you're building these bridges, you will have a long-term relationship with them, and so it's not so transactional.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had, you know, also several, throughout my career, several partnerships where I had to work with people from different teams. Initially, maybe we, you know, a person or I wouldn't see like eye to eye. We'd have to have a couple of different, like, you know, separate conversations, as you all mentioned, outside of like the larger meeting. And I think, you know, at the end, it's a little bit of persistence, right? And just sort of like, you know, figuring out the common ground that will bring you together to partner together and to be able to work on projects. And, you know, it's funny because funny enough, a lot of my close friends from previous, you know, places that I've worked, we sort of started out sometimes not necessarily on the right foot. Like, you wouldn't envision us to be friends, you know, like we had a path of our relationship that sort of that kind of did a winding road, and we wound up at the end sort of becoming great friends. So it's like having some of those honest conversations, you know, communication, I feel like it's so important in everything we do, but a lot, you know, really in driving collaborations and forming partnerships.
I'd say that also goes to like the strategy. So there is this concept in Japanese, it's called nemawashi, and it's basically the meeting before the meeting. And so in Japan, they have all these side meetings so that you're never surprised at the end result in the meeting because it's preordained and pre-discussed.
Yeah, I've done that before. I've gotten the buy-in before the big meeting from key stakeholders so that when I present the idea, I'm like, you know, everyone sort of is already on board and we sort of agree and we move forward and the meeting is productive, but you don't have, you know, for me personally, to avoid a lot of those awkward interactions. I'd love to just chat a little bit about some of the collaborations and partnerships that you have brought to, you know, to life through, you know, some of the dynamic things you've done at Postmates, Rachel at Gen Agency, and Michelle at Cape. So I don't know who wants to start, but like your favorite collab, maybe it could be something that was something you thought of that like came to life so easily, or maybe it was actually the one challenging collaboration that you were like, I don't know if this is going to get over the finish line, and it does. And it, like when that happens, it's like so much sweeter, like the payoff. So I don't know who wants to start.
Oh, okay. I think there's one partnership we actually had, and it did go well, technically. When we first started our agency, we had a influencer house. If you know what an influencer house is, it's exactly that. So, some things came with that, but, in the end, it was about having these content creators in a house, and their job the whole time that they're there literally living is to create content for a brand. We had multiple brands in the house. We had one main sponsor, and in the end, the partnership went really well. They were happy. We got all the deliverables. The creators had a great time. To this day, they're all still close friends. And, as great as it looked on the outside, on the inside, it was very hectic, and it was exactly the type of operational hecticness and marketing, and then dealing with all these different personalities with talent and things like that. But the thing that I took from it actually was a mental health aspect. And what really happened was I had worked so hard, had so much stress that I actually got hospitalized. And I was in the hospital, got this cyst in my face, it blew up. I genuinely looked like I got kicked in the face by a horse. But I had to learn and really sit down and understand that mental health was so important. And that, you have to take time for yourself, and you have to understand your body, and you have to understand how to, deal with the pressures of having, in my case, my own company or doing these content creation sessions. And as important as it was to the performance of the event, and as important as it was for everyone to have a good time and to hit all of our deliverables, the revenue, everything, the one thing that I got out of it that I look back on today was the mental health aspect, just how important it is to take those extra seconds, if you're working remotely, to, go for a walk or go get lunch or work with some colleagues so you have some, mutual time with other people. And I think even though, that was about partnerships, I think what I actually got from it was the mental health side.
I can jump in. Yeah, so my favorite collaboration is actually something that started as something very personal, so here's the other bit of news. You can say you're being collaborative, but it might really just be something you really want to do, and you're getting help getting it done. But a couple years ago, for AAPI month, and I think especially a couple years ago, it was particularly fashionable to show up, and there was a lot of performative stuff going on. But I was trying to think about how can we do something really creative and interesting, meaningful, emotional, and also impact the business. So I got a room of our creatives together, and it happened to be half of them were AAPI. And we all bonded over a shared experience about being embarrassed about school lunch. Your homemade lunch that your parents would make you bring to school, you open it up out of the Tupperware, and it smells like farts, and everyone's making fun of you, right? And this was a universal thing. And there were non-AAPI folks as well. It was very much an immigrant experience, unusual food. Cut to nowadays, everything is fermented kimchi, blah, blah, blah. So it's sort of flipped, yeah. And so we had this idea about bringing back school lunches that you were embarrassed by, and working with restaurants in LA, we actually worked with Yangban, which is an incredible restaurant. Yeah. Oh, did they close? Oh, shit. All right, sorry. Well, we worked with Yangban and Big Boy, which is a Filipino restaurant, and then we partnered with two celebrities. We worked with Greta Lee. This was on the heels of Past Lives. She was promoting for A24, and Bretman Rock. And we got their stories about being embarrassed about lunch and what that food was. And then we had those restaurants recreate them and put them on our platform. And so stuff like that couldn't have happened. Like I said, it was born out of a shared experience in a room of AAPI creatives, but then we got ops involved, we got the product people involved, we got these restaurants reconfiguring their menus to support this because they all bought into the idea. That felt to me like a very meaningful collaboration.
I really struggled with this question because I don't have a favorite. I'm fortunate that we get to work with all kinds of partners. And when I started at CAPE 10 years ago, we had one program, which was our Writers Fellowship. And now we have 9. And so every time I have a new idea, it's like this fun thing of pitching it around and seeing who will buy in and support us and be partners with us on it. And I've had the fortune to work with a lot of people in this room, Bill Amata at IW and Julie Lee at TDW and some others. And so it's like that's the exciting part, when you come up with an idea and then see it come to life with other partners. So that's something that I really love. The most recent thing that we've been looking at CAPE is to branch out and build bridges internationally. And so our latest program has been with JETRO and the Consul General of Japan to work with filmmakers in Japan. And so really want to elevate that and do more internationally. So that is our next bridge.
That's exciting. And thank you all for sharing like such interesting and diverse partnerships and collaborations. You know, I think even for myself, as I think back to sort of some of the ones I've done earlier on in my career to sort of, you know, present day, I would say one of my favorites, and it's sort of like behind the scenes, was I worked on a program with SpongeBob and the United States Postal Service. We were trying to get this, next generation to feel the joy of receiving and sending mail. And we had like, I don't know, it was like 2-month window to produce the project. It was new money coming in. It was something that I was passionate about, but it was also a collaboration that like we had the date of like whatever it was, November 15th, most highly trafficked date at all the post offices across the country because of holiday. And we had to get to that North Star of that date. And so it was a lot of collaboration, a lot of getting people on the same page, people saying, I have other projects. I'm like, no, but this is going to be like incredible. And we, you know, and kind of building off of, you know, sort of the tight deadline as sort of something that propelled the program and everyone to move forward. But thank you all for sharing. I think before we sort of move out into Q&A, I think wanted to sort of get some thoughts from the 3 panelists on networking. I was spending a little bit of time before we hopped onto this panel talking to some folks about just networking and mentorship and kind of what does that look like from starting out early on in your career to as you go on further and kind of maintaining those relationships and seeing how they carry you through. You know, I can say for myself, I've gone through some challenging times and my network had been there and I didn't even really intentionally think about it. I was just out there meeting people at places, conferences like this and ERG groups and other things. And when I was sort of in a place where I needed some support, my network was there and it never felt so comforting. So I guess just for the 3 of you, I know sometimes it's easier to do networking when we know people or it's a little bit more familial, whether it's in our company or with an ERG within our company. But what about in a place like this where you're kind of coming in, maybe you're coming with one friend or a couple colleagues, but essentially the audience is all pretty new, they're new people to meet. Do you have any tips or like what do you guys do when you're sort of entering a space and it's full of a lot of people you don't know? What are the things that you do to start a conversation?
I think, you know, in networking, I always find things that may be mutual. I think that's probably the easiest way to go is you might meet someone and maybe you are both Korean, or maybe you both are from OC, or maybe you flew in. There are little things that when you meet people, I think it's awkward for everyone. But if you can find something that is mutual and then maybe you guys can talk about it, and then talking about bringing that beyond just this one event is, you know, you remember that conversation the next time you speak about it. Let's say that they mention, oh, I've got another trip coming up, or, you know, I've got something else that I'm doing. If you remember those things, those details about people, it's incredibly important and does you a really good benefit in future conversations when you talk to them that you remembered those things. You know, you remembered that their kid might have a birthday coming up or something like that. And in my career, I found having those conversations where you show how much you care about someone and how much you care about that relationship, it's helped incredibly as I've gone along.
Yeah, I think it's just about making friends. Like, I think the word networking can sound very scary, but if it's like, oh, this is a room of friends I haven't met yet, then I think if you approach it with that attitude, it's a little bit of what the keynote speaker was saying this morning about if you can just leave making one new friend or 3 new friends, then that can be a win.
Yeah, as a natural introvert, networking just sounds like really scary, you know?
I'm with you
at
on
all
that,
times.
David.
Yeah.
Same here.
I think we all are.
So, yeah, I think we just need to rebrand the thing a bit, but I also think like for me, networking isn't necessarily about going really wide. I think it's about going deep with folks that you connect with, you know? I don't think I was very conscious of networking per se. But what I tried to do and what I really value, especially in sort of like the creative business is like I said, you can't do anything alone. You usually work in these small, tight, I always say it's about like 5 to 8 people. And as you work on different projects, right, like just math-wise, 5 to 8 here, 5 to 8 here, your network starts to deepen and broaden that way. But I also think when you invest in your like team and coworkers, they then become your amplifiers, right? They're like, oh yeah, this person was really a joy to work with. And you don't even need to do the work. Other people are doing the work for you. And I think it kind of goes back to that comment. It's so simple of just being nice, you know, being mindful of people and just kind of understanding where they're coming from. You know, and if you are a bit of an introvert and don't know how to start a conversation, just ask those basic questions, you know, get to know them, you know, on a more personal level, and then you'll just naturally get more invested. They'll get more invested in you. And, you know, there's plenty of books, I'm sure, out there about how to start a conversation, but those things kind of help, you know, but yeah.
I was going to say, I think as Asians, we are also naturally more introverted, so we may not want to start those conversations. I think just to plug AIA a little bit, like there are mentorship programs out there for you in which you can work with people on more of a one-to-one basis, so you can really spend time developing that relationship and learning from them, even bringing other, you know, tough conversations to them about what their experience may have been like in business, in this one job, or even I'm facing this at work and I really want to talk to someone that I value their opinion and respect and who may have gone through these challenges. I think mentorship programs are one of the best ways that you can go. If you don't have a mentorship program, find some office hours of someone who may have them. I think just having that one-to-one relationship can also be really powerful too.
Yeah, 100%. I think something I heard recently in some of the conversations I've had with people, and I'm part of a bunch of different groups, and sometimes it's like built around a topic or subject matter, and I'll connect with somebody because I'm having a challenge with A, B, or C from a business perspective. But sometimes I'll just, you know, reach out to somebody or connect with them personally. And the things that I've, like the way conversations have ended lately, it's, you know, is there anything that I can do to help you? And my response is, you know, usually, no, I'm just so happy that you made time to speak with me. So I think, you know, when I hear networking, when I was starting out, I always felt like there had to be some sort of exchange, right? Like whether that was a contact or time or anything. And as I've, you know, sort of progressed and just, I don't know if it's the timing, but I think people are just like also just wanting to connect more and, you know, around like-minded interests or something that they want to learn about. And there's no, you know, you don't have to give anything. It's just really like a moment to connect. I don't know if any of you have experienced that, but it was really refreshing, and I felt really refreshed to say it. Like, no, I'm not in a situation where we're in a company and I need actually you to deliver me something. I just wanted to have a conversation because I thought you were, you know, I heard you speak on a panel, or, you know, we had a brief conversation at a, you know, a happy hour, and I wanted to continue. But yeah, I feel like that's like really refreshing when there's not like really any kind of exchange except just creating a connection. So, well, I want to thank you, David, Rachel, Michelle, for such a great conversation. Lots of insights, lots of great strategies. You know, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about just collaborations and how, it's a maneuvering of relationships, and some of those relationships take many years to develop, and some of them kind of happen overnight or in a more fast-track timeline. And I also appreciated, David, your perspective on sort of being on the agency side as well as being on the brand side from a creative executive role, because it's something that I'm not really familiar with. I sit more on the, account management and marketing and business side. So thank you for sharing that as well in terms of the differences. And I think before we get into Q&A, I really wanted to thank Rachel, David, and Michelle again, because they have generously donated some fun prizes. So I just asked the audience to take a look under their seats. If you have a Post-it note underneath your seat, just please see me after this panel.
Like, I don't get any.
It's going to be a yellow Post-it note, not the label that is attached to the seat.
I think don't pull off the seat label.
Oh no, don't pull off the seat
label.
It's a yellow Post-it note. It's a yellow Post-it note, not a white label.
It is not the chair directions.
Anyone? Post-it note. Okay,
No,
so
we're like ripping off the.
can you see me after the panel? Anyone else? Okay, so see me after the panel? Okay. All right. If anyone else?
Oh, yeah.
There are 5 of them floating in the audience.
Yeah.
No? Okay, so see me after the panel. But they've donated some really fun things. The Postmates Don't Cookbook, the Greta Lee Postmates Lunchbox collab, a Gen Agency gift bag, and two VIP tickets to the Belly Laughs Festival on Sunday, July 13th at LA Live. So there's more information floating around, QR code to get more info for tickets. So with that being said, I'd love to open it up to the audience for questions. There are microphones in the audience, so please don't be shy. Come up and ask a question.
Wow, this light is bright. My question, so networking, of course, is incredibly important, as well as providing mentorship or being a mentee. Since you guys are, at a pretty high level, I've heard of developing your own board of directors to one, maybe not someone you talk to all the time, but who provides advice to you, people that you can go to, if you have a problem or you want to think about networking at a different level. Have you all developed your own board of directors, and how did you go about doing that if you did?
Yes, in my company, we have a board, and then we do have a lot of informal mentors. I think technically, we looked at different competencies and different levels of, understanding that they have in their business, whether it be sales, marketing, on my side, sports, and some other areas. And I think that what's great in the formal side is they can help you make decisions, and they can help give insight on what they've known in their career, which, experiences are so powerful. What people have gone through, good or bad, and the things that they've learned are things that can help you kind of jump over maybe those adversities that you may get. I think on a personal side too, I just have been so lucky because I am so young to have a network of individuals who are both younger and older than me in business, in many different areas that can help me see their perspective and understand maybe, something that I'm not seeing or a way that I would not have thought to solve a problem.
Yeah, I work with a lot of creatives, and one thing I always tell all of them is you are the CEO of your own company. Like, basically to your question, like, no one is going to care as much about your career as you. So really, you need to think about what is your personal brand, what are you putting out there into the universe, and that is something that you always have to monitor. And one thing I will say about mentoring is the way I define it is anyone that knows more about something than I do can be my mentor. So it doesn't always have to be looking up. Like, you can look all around you. When I first started as a lawyer, my first mentor was my legal assistant. She had worked at the firm a long time. She knew which partners were cool to work with, which ones were the ones to stay away from. She knew how to file things at court. So, really just don't count anyone out when you're looking for a mentor.
I realize I probably have a board of directors, but I didn't call it such, but now I will. But yeah, I think, you know, again, I'm speaking so much from the perspective of just like a creative exec, I guess. And the higher you go up, the fewer of us there are, right? So like, one is I have been toying with the notion of like starting a little bit of a more formal social network of sorts, especially with creatives moving brand side. You know, we naturally sort of reach out and talk to each other. So I think it's kind of surprising at how open people are, and sometimes they're wanting that connection as much as you are, because like I said, there's fewer folks who've had this kind of experience. And especially on top of that, if you're, you know, person of color, it's even more like, you know, you'll have more shared, you know, experiences and things to talk about. So yeah, I think you should always approach all your contacts as a potential list of a board of advisors, directors, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. This is a question more about like collaboration, like working in groups and all that. I was really inspired by the story of the lunch boxes with Greta Lee, and it just sounded like all of the stars seemed to align on like making that project come together, which is like so cool. It's like part of why I found so much interest in getting into advertising, because I wanted to like come together as a group of people, as a team, to like make something amazing together. But there are times when there are like too many cooks in the kitchen, you know? And so like, how do you, within a group, either as a leader or a contributor, like manage that so that like everybody gets heard? You know, like everyone has so many great ideas and you kind of want to bring them all to life, but the more we are like, oh, we want to cater to everybody, the less we move forward. Like, how do you balance that so that way you can end up with a final project at the end and not like billions of drafts?
Ooh, that's an awesome question, you know? So, you need a single decision maker, you know, at the end of the day. And so, a lot of my job at this point is to, I sort of describe it in two ways. I either like plant a seed of an idea and let other folks run with it, or I'm just the person sort of trimming the hedges and making sure it comes out correct. So I think just, you know, sort of assigning one person, but that person doesn't always necessarily need to be me or the person like at the top of the hierarchy. I can also elect to choose someone more junior to make those decisions. And so two quick things. One is there's been some great documentaries on Saturday Night Live for its 50th anniversary. And one of the things that stood out to me was how a writer who writes a sketch, they control everything down to production. So they might not have even directed anything, but what SNL forces these creatives to do is like understand that they need to make decisions about everything. You're not just writing copy or dialogue. You need to know what necktie is going to be worn by the actor. And so the more you just put people in a position where they have to make these decisions, and look, like so much of my career, I could care less whether the necktie was yellow or red, but you just make a decision so you can keep moving forward. I think that's very important. But I also think like my style, and I think it's kind of worked for me, is I'll hop in when necessary, but I really want others to kind of figure this thing out, and it's okay to make a mistake. That's all part of the learning process.
Yeah, I would just like add on to what you said is like kind of synthesizing. Like I've worked in environments where it's very collaborative and you've got a lot of different opinions and teams and goals. And I think you really need, like what David said, sort of empower a team member to like really take the lead and make the decisions. But you also have to synthesize things and kind of as that leader, make sure that, maybe if two people are saying somewhat of the same thing, but just differently, synthesizing that. If someone is saying something and then the other person is like contradicting that, like kind of figure out, where we're landing on that. So a lot of it becomes, I feel like a lot of cooks in the kitchen was definitely some of the experiences I had in my past. Just trying to synthesize it, because at the end of the day, you bring it up to like David, if he's my supervisor, nothing is going to move forward unless we empower to like have things just, decided. I don't know if anyone else has. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Oh, we just have time maybe for one more. Oh, sorry.
Hello. Thank you
Hi.
for sharing all your stories. It's very inspiring. So my name is Alex, and I have a question. You guys are pretty at the manager level. How important is mentorship to people who are like just rising from their current rank, and I think for people who are like first generations, grad school graduate, they experience certain unique challenge, like they always have to navigate independently. What are some of your recommendations to them when it comes to seeking mentorships?
I would say, I'm first generation. The one difference I may have is that I'm actually adopted and my parents are white. So, they did go to college. And so I always knew that that was something that I wanted to do and that was important to them. But what I do for a living and what I'm interested in is so vastly different than what, my family has done for generations, and what I was taught was success, which was still pushed on as becoming a lawyer or a doctor or a dentist, those sorts of things. And I found that I was willing to make my own way and willing to work hard and make those spaces for myself. But again, I didn't necessarily know how to find my way through the door, or didn't know how to find the door or the right people, and didn't know how to lead a team, because that's not something that people in my family had done before. So mentorship in that sense was so important, that even if you get to a spot where you feel like you know what you're doing, there are people that have gone through that can give you perspectives and, again, be a sounding board or help answer questions for you, help you vent, whatever it might be. I think finding those mentors that are not just maybe directly to what you're doing, but even just are in other areas that can give you that perspective and that help. I think it's incredibly important no matter what level you're at. I think we've said over and over that mentors don't have to be people who are above you vertically. They can be people who are equal to you horizontally, or even are newer to the industry as well. So I think mentorship, no matter what level you are, is incredibly important, whether it's for professional and personal.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very encouraging.
And I'd also just say, in addition to mentors, look for sponsors. And a sponsor is someone who is higher up that and can really make a difference in your career by advocating for you in your organization, really to stick their neck out for you and vouch for you.
Thank you. That's very insightful.
Great. Thank you all so much for the great questions. And thank you, Rachel and David and Michelle, for a great conversation. I hope you all go out later on today. We have a happy hour at the conclusion, and meet someone new. Have a great rest of the summit. Thank you.